Great. We're good to go.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock. First few minutes, we're going to do a public hearing. So at this point, the first item is up, the nationwide Eclipse ballooning project. Does someone have, is that, oh, okay, good. Come on up, introduce yourself.
Sure, where should I go?
Right in front of the microphone right there.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Christopher Halali. I work here at the high school, and I am the team mentor and advisor for the Aerospace and Aviation Club. And through a competitive application, Hanover High School was selected to join 55 other, mostly universities, in a project that is NASA funded to have a team of students go to 2 of the solar eclipses that will be coming up in 2023 and 2024, and launching weather balloons with the teams that will be there and the university leads, and to learn about atmospheric science and to learn about more about eclipses and their effects on the Earth.
Yeah, awesome. That's great. That's phenomenal. And you're also probably the sharpest dressed teacher I've seen at Hanover High School.
I appreciate it. It's me and Mr. Murphy.
Does anyone have any questions for Kristen?
I do. I think this is absolutely fabulous, and I assume you're going all the way up to Burlington for the first one, is that right? Is that
The second one.
the second one? Is
And
the
most
one
likely it'll be upstate New York is what it looks like so far.
But my question, that wasn't my question. My question is, how many girls are involved with this club?
So right now, we actually have only 1 or 2 girls that come to our club. It's a majority boys, but we've selected in our program that when we submitted our application, we talked about equity and the importance of that. Mm-hmm. So in our application cycle for the team, not necessarily for the club, but for the team for the project, we will be, of course, having equity as a pivotal point for that. So that's, and also racial diversity and things, the things that NASA has put as sort of their sort of their sort of goal for all of their missions and everything. Mm-hmm. We also will apply it to our program as well.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
So what was involved in the application process? How did you get selected?
We were selected based on, number one, having a club and a mentor who's willing to take the lead for the students. Number 2, a school that had the opportunity to either provide funding or resources to the students. It wasn't necessarily guaranteed that we would be fully funded, but with the amount of schools that applied and the competitive nature, we were selected as fully funded. So, we basically said that we have some resources as a district, and also there are some resources in the wider community that we could have leaned on and asked for support for this project. But we don't have to do that now because we have been selected as a fully funded program.
And because it's not a true grant where NASA's giving the school money, there's no vote on this. So how does the financial, so you just put in invoices for costs?
Correct. Everything will be reimbursement based. Okay. And that'll be on their side. But because of the nature of it, the school administration felt that it was prudent to bring it to the school board. So of course,
I think it's phenomenal.
I'm here.
Great. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
That kind of continues my, I fully enjoy hearing about this and everything. I'm a little bit confused as to the board's role though in approving it.
We're not approving it.
Okay.
It was just more of just information to let the board know that we won, but because we're invoicing, we're not receiving, we don't have to vote on accepting the money.
Okay.
The only thing that will be received is items and equipment. So like for example, weather balloons and things like that, we will receive as a school, but there will be no money to the school.
Okay. And Jamie, is there any requirement like cost of balloons and all that stuff? Do we have to keep below a certain threshold?
Well, the value of the items, if it's 3,000, it depends on if it's over 5, right? I mean, our policy says if the value is over 1,000, we vote to accept it. It's a little weird because I don't know that it's a donation, but it's not formally a federal grant either. So, I mean, I don't think it will hurt if we say we approve it just because of the dollar amount in our policy saying that donations and gifts over 1,000, we approve.
Okay. And I assume if we get a weather balloon, we're not going to be turning it back into NASA, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
The items, the goal is actually that the items stay here and that they're used by the
Okay.
club even after the project ends.
So they'll be gifted to us.
Correct.
Okay. Does anyone have an issue with just voting on this tonight? Does someone want to make a motion? Kim?
Move to approve the nationwide Eclipse ballooning project award as presented.
Ben? Great. All in favor, say aye. Raise your hand.
Oh, hold on, Kelly McConnell just joined. Which means we need to do.
Thank you, Kelly.
Can you add Kelly McConnell to the panel, please?
Neil?
I'm still confused as to that was my question before. What do we approve?
So until we had this discussion about the supplies,
Okay.
the decision was there was nothing for us to approve because we're not actually receiving a grant. But now that the potential supplies are in excess of $1,000, we decided just to approve the acceptance of these equipment and supplies.
Yes.
Jamie's trying to say something. She's muted.
Jamie, you're muted.
But sorry, because it's a gift with a value, right, above $1,000. So our policy says if you have gifts, I thought our policy said gifts above or donations above 1,000, we approve. We vote to accept.
Okay.
Right.
So local policy.
Yes.
Yes, the state policy is above, I believe it's above 5,000.
Again, Odell, yes.
Camden,
Kevin, yes.
Barry, yes.
Johnson, yes.
Keeney, yes.
Christie, yes.
Hartman, yes.
Nelson, yes.
Plus, yes.
Kelly?
McConnell, yes.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Appreciate it.
So the next item, public hearing, is approve a gift from the Friends of Hanover Crew. Someone, Julie, just gotta quickly,
Yeah.
it looks like it's the purchase of 2 motors from
Yeah, so
Hondas?
this is part of the process of, and I think the athletic department also realizing every time they get a pole vaulting pit that's $2,500, all those things are gonna have to start coming here with the policy of $1,000. So we bought 2 motors. They were about 3,000 something each. We're letting you know that the Friends of Hanover Crew is donating that to the school. The school will then own those motors. We're hoping that's okay. We need them to chase the folks.
Anyone have any comments or questions? I have a motion to approve. Kim?
Move to approve the gift of 2 motors for crew boats donated by Friends of Hanover Crew as presented.
Second. Deb?
Second.
Neil?
Odell, yes.
and yes.
Kevin, yes.
Barry, yes.
Johnson, yes.
Keeney, yes.
Christie, yes.
Hartman, yes.
Nelson, yes.
Plus, yes.
Kelly?
McConnell, yes.
Thank you. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing and move into our normal school board meeting. So at this point, agenda review, does anyone have items to add to the agenda? So Ben?
I'd like to add a discussion and a action of a sustainability warrant article.
Okay. Jay?
And I would like to table the technology presentation until the February meeting.
Okay. Kim?
I'd like to add the 2 motions that are listed in public content to the regular agenda, which would be essentially the 2 budget committee recommendations we discussed at last meeting about substitute teacher pay and the investigation into EA staffing issues for a potential vote later.
Did you say it was in the public comment section?
Yes, I see
You
it.
mean it's
Yeah, under agenda review.
16.
Under 3A, agenda review, it says,
Oh, okay.
it's below
Oh, I
the
see.
sustainability warrant
Got it.
article.
Okay. So that's just a vote. Do we need a discussion on that, or since?
We discussed it, last meeting.
Yep. Okay.
We can always discuss it after someone moves.
Okay. Any other additions or subtractions? Okay, moving on to public comment. The chair will give members of the public 3 minutes each to comment on items not on the agenda. The board respectfully asks members of the public to state their name and address before commenting on agenda topics. Anyone in the audience or online have a comment? Okay. Moving on to the report of our council rep. Is she on the line? Oh, great.
Yeah, hi. So due to the holiday break and exam week and numerous snow days, council has only had 2 meetings since the last Dresden School Board meeting, but we have discussed a land acknowledgement motion that was then referred to the Examining Equity Committee, and we also elected a new assistant moderator and held nominations for a new CPP rep. And finally, we passed a motion that recommends that the Dresden School Board investigates safety issues on Hovey Lane, which is our back parking lot area.
Can you fill us in on what that actually is? Because I live on Hovey Lane.
So the motion was brought, was written by Mr. Murphy, who's a teacher at Hanover High. And I don't drive to school, so I can't say firsthand exactly what the problem is, but a lot of students and teachers note that there is significant backup in the mornings when kids are trying to pull into school to park on Hovey Lane, which is our back parking lot area behind the school. And what was suggested earlier was that it become like a one-way, and I don't know how that would work, but essentially council just wants the school board to work alongside local authorities and kind of figure out what can be done on Hovey Lane to make sure that it's more safe for everyone who's driving there.
Great, so we'll wait. So the mechanism, you're going to send us something, or are we supposed to take this for action now?
Yeah, so it's a motion, so it just says to investigate, so I think that's up to your own interpretation in terms of what that looks like. But I think the sooner the better in terms of when you start looking at how you could approach this issue.
So
Do you want me to explain it a little bit more?
well, I know exactly what the problem is, and I have a conflict of interest.
Right.
So
They're hoping it's a one-way going in here and out there, because the out there is also dangerous trying to go out with the traffic, oncoming traffic too. So they're hoping for a one-way. We know that gate's locked. So that's why they forward to talk to the town about ways to make it safe.
one way coming off of Main
So you
Street,
would
or
go, if you wanted to go behind the school, you would turn in by Quaker Meeting House there.
Yeah.
And you would exit by the lock.
Oh, so you would unlock that gate there?
Yes, the infamous gate. And so it would just be that people would come in this way, out that way, and it would be one-way traffic.
So what is the process? Do we just take that for action now, Neil?
My suggestion would be, I mean, if the chair did not have a conflict of interest, that you just would then add it as a future agenda item for the board to discuss.
Okay.
And that way you can, the board can collectively determine whether or not there is an issue that needs to be addressed, and then what we would like to do about it.
Sounds good. So
Excuse me.
Yes, Jamie?
So we have investigated that, and when, oh God, it's a long time ago, and when that was put in, because of the residents on Hovey Lane, so when they put all the track and the field and all that in, the town, it's not allowed per the permit that was put in place when it was voted to be allowed to be developed back there, because they didn't want increased traffic on Hovey Lane. So they will not allow us to unlock that gate. They've only allowed us to unlock that gate in special circumstances. One was due to COVID and the way we were trying to do drop off and stuff. So we can chat again, but just know that it was a part of the permit. It was a condition, I think, of
I assume we can ask for a waiver or a rescinding of that. We just have to go to the town, right?
Yeah, it would go to the town.
Okay. So can we just add that to the February agenda? Got it, okay. Thank you. Anyone else have any comments or questions? Thank you, Vidushi. Okay, moving on to Hanover High School Principals Report.
So well, we're in the middle of a 13-day exam period. The exam that will never end, and that's been interesting, and there's definitely comments coming my way from parents, et cetera, so, which is fine. And then I just wanted to, I put here the differentiation PD that we're working on, just to give a sense of what we're doing. Last year, we did an all-staff PD. This year, the staff voted last spring to do something on differentiation. We were lucky enough to have our equity steward who could work on it and make it better than us just throwing out a book and saying, read it and let's talk about it. She's really been working hard to make it worthwhile for staff. And so just wanted to show you what we're working on. Once a month, we meet with a differentiation PD for an hour/2 hours.
So the issue with the 13-day exam period is it's too long, or?
Yeah, like, I mean, for some people, they're worried because their kids are really stressed and studying all the time for the whole 13 days. That's not what's happening at my house. It's the opposite, like more like the languishing and really having a lot of rest. Then I sent out equity survey, so people were worried, like, why are we worried about equity when we're not worried about academics, because we've been dragging out the exams. Like, you can imagine everyone has an opinion.
And if you don't have an exam that day, you don't have to come to school. Is that the other
Right.
issue? So a lot of
Right.
people
Right.
are home. Okay.
Right, and so for some kids, what it means is 2-hour exam, snow day. 2-hour exam, snow day weekend. Right, so for some kids, it's amazing because they've been really sick and they're getting better and they're resting and all of that. And for some kids, they've been stressed the whole time and they have another 8 hours to study for their chemistry exam and they're using it and they can't, this thing needs to be over.
And why is this a problem now? Has it been a problem in the past, or is it because we've changed
No,
the
it's because there's a
scheduling?
snow day every other day
So it's
and it keeps pushing the exams.
Mother Nature.
Mother Nature has caused a problem.
So Jamie.
Yes, exactly. And Jay.
Take my half of that.
It's totally, I
Okay.
mean, it's what we have to do. We can't make decisions based on the exam period. We make them based on safety, right?
Okay.
So that's but it's okay, like it'll be fine. But I think we're actually rethinking exams and whether we want to make exams part of class time. And so in a way, this might be good because now we have an example of how it can really
Yeah, that's
drag out and it might help in that conversation.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Lisa?
I was just gonna say, there was also a 3-day weekend in there too, so there was
Yeah.
already a
Yeah.
break
Yeah.
that was planned in addition to the 2 snow days, in addition to everything else.
Yeah.
Lily?
Oh, no.
Go. You're doing Sharon. Any other comments or questions for Julie? Thank you. Tim?
Okay, well, wrote this last Thursday, and we've already had some changes, so. We moved our roundtable discussion on middle school learning tomorrow night, when was slated to start right when it was about to start really snowing, to the next Wednesday, which will be after the curriculum night at Hanover High School. We moved our first bake sale in a while to Friday, which means that we have been trying to sort of stagger some of the things that we've been doing. But this Friday we'll have a social at night, a bake sale during the day, and a decades spirit day during the day. I said we're all looking forward to seeing what the students think we wore when we went to school, which I'm pretty sure is not going to be totally accurate, but should be worth the price of admission. Other than that, we're sort of working on trying to set up a more specific plan between now and the end of the year in terms of things that we offer for parents, different social events that we offer for our students, so that we have a better plan. We sort of got into the habit in the last couple of years of planning sort of 3 weeks in advance because we never knew what was going to happen. So we're trying to now figure out how to plan further in advance. We are hoping, this is, I think, big news here. We're hoping to be fully staffed by the end of the week, which would be pretty terms of ed assistance and everything else. We're really looking forward to that. But other than that, we're kind of in that hunker down mode. We started the third quarter. Schedules have changed. We're in the process of, we have 4 new students who have come in this semester. So getting them back up to speed.
Where did they come from? Out of district or?
Out of district. So we have one from Lebanon, one from Chile, one from Spain, and I don't remember where the fourth one is from. Yeah, so yeah, it's fun. And it's good for the students too. They've sort of gotten sick of each other at this point. So now they're new people who are cool just because they're new. So that's fun. Other than that, that's where we are. I tried to share just a sort of a quick understanding of one of our plus classes, which was our 7th grade plus class, that did blogging, and they're going to do it in the spring. So we sort of went round and round about how to exactly to share all that information with people on the board without sharing it as a full public document. So we worked on that a little bit. We'll continue to work on that. And we look forward to offering other vignettes sort of as we go forward. With lots of some pretty amazing stuff that our students are doing. And also for the second iteration of these plus classes, then we'll go through the third and the fourth quarter. And I know that a number of our teachers have already said, hey, this is really neat, but it could be even better if we did this. We did have our data gathering day, which was broken up by snow days again. But our 6th grade, I think I sent things to people about our 6th grade science students who are, Ms. Mercantine gets them to come up with some sort of an experiment that they want to do, a hypothesis they want to test, and then how do they do it? And then they all set up in the library and gather all this information. So I did a lot of reaction timing on Thursday, something with my pulse rate, depending on what kind of music they played. And I think I threw off the music or threw off the whole experiment because they played heavy metal. And my pulse rate went down because I listened to heavy metal a lot when I was younger, so I was very familiar. So the student was a little confused. But a lot of those things are going. That's where
Thank you. Any comments or questions for Tim? Thank you. Okay, moving on to business requiring discussion. The draft school calendar. I assume everyone in Hanover saw it last week. I assume Norwich saw it. Are there any comments or questions about this? Okay. Moving on, we're going to move the technology presentation to February. Annual meeting prep. Actually, what do we do the sustainable Hanover warrant?
If everybody refreshes, I've tried my best to update everything.
Okay.
So, should I?
Go ahead, Ben.
So as at Norwich and Hanover separately, the Sustainable Hanover Group tried to get motions to pass. I was not present at the Norwich meeting, but I'm told it did not pass. There was much discussion over the wording, and we did end up passing it with many language amendments. I'll read what was approved right now unanimously, 6-0 with 1 member absent at Hanover. It reads, to affirm that the Hanover School Board will establish policies to support the transitioning of school facilities and operations to renewable sources of electricity and renewable sources of heating/cooling and transportation. Strategies for moving forward will seek effective and sustainable outcomes while being fiscally responsible. So most notably, the things that have disappeared are dates and dollar amounts. Percentages, I'm sorry, as well as some other issues, wordsmithing. And like I said, that did pass in Hanover unanimously with 1 absent person.
Any comments or questions? Tom?
Well, I can speak to Norwich and my colleagues as well. While we're 100% in favor, I think, of sustainable approaches to what we do moving forward, it's not
the whole idea of having a warrant article come to us after the warrant articles have been voted on is a bit, setting's the right word, but we do put in a lot of effort from August to now to actually do a lot of research on the warrants that go into the articles and go before the public as well. Further, we're going to have a lot of information on this next year. So we're finishing a facilities audit right now to give us data on how we approach this over the course of time. We've got a facilities subcommittee that's been looking at this over the course of the year. If we put this on the warrant next year, we would be able to have something that actually means something and would be an informed board voting on it. We're not doing that tonight. I know that the rationale has been given that, well, we would know what the electorate wants. I know what the electorate wants. And frankly, if the electorate didn't want sustainability, I don't care. I'd vote for sustainability. The point of this, the fact that it's coming at this late time, the fact that we're going to have a load of data that can actually support putting forth an article like this next year, I don't think it should be put out here. And actually, March didn't vote on it. We just had this discussion, and we got the sense from the rest of the board members that it shouldn't go on, so we didn't even actually vote on putting it on at that time.
But your version was not this version. This was the one that had.
My personal opinion,
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Okay. But there's nothing that precludes next year having another warrant article with more firm numbers and goals, correct?
I just don't see, why would you put something before the electorate that has no?
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Ben?
Speaking to try to generalize the Hanover conversation, Hanover members feel free to chime in here. We had similar discussions, and several board members, and I include myself there, felt also sort of like without teeth, why are we doing it? And I think in addition to what you commented about helping see what the voters stand for, have a good buy-in from the community for future attempts, I think it was sort of a, let's take what we can get and see what happens approach. And we did vote on it. It was unanimous at Hanover after a lot of discussion, and several members, again, including myself, also did not really appreciate the timing of it. Which, as we know, historically at this board, we're often approached with sort of last minute things. I know we're trying hard to push back on that as well.
And so that's the other thing too, is I think this sets a precedent that we don't want. I mean, for example, a lot of people who like this after we voted on the warrant article, we say, let's just put a warrant article out there in front of the people to see what they would think about the notion of the baseball field and fix that. It's not a good way to move forward.
I would just say, though, that the public has the right to petition warrant articles. And can, and I think
With
that
100 and some signatures.
correct. I'm not arguing that. I'm just saying that we can't keep warrant articles, additional warrant articles off. And I think it was, in my memory, at our last Dresden meeting, the sense that while Sustainable Hanover was prepared to do that, we saw value in working together on it. So I think that there are kind of some mixed messages going. Am I correct that that was the last Dresden meeting?
It was brought up at the earlier January Dresden meeting.
Right.
And we agreed to
try
to meet and fashion a
wordsmith
language.
it. Right, right. So I think this is, I think it's unfortunate that at that time, we didn't more clearly say, we don't really want to be adding items to the warrant. I don't disagree with anything that you're saying. I just think that we kind of opened a door, and this is what we now have in front of us.
Ben?
And just to clarify, per the discussion at the last Dresden meeting, Rick and I did meet with Sustainable Hanover before the Hanover meeting to do some wordsmithing.
Mhm.
It was further changed at the meeting itself.
Any other comment? Yeah.
Are we proposing then, what is the proposal? Are we entertaining a motion?
Yeah, we're gonna have to vote on whether this is gonna be included on the Dresden.
Can I hear it read one more time, or is it included? Am I not?
I'm happy to read it
It's
out
in
loud.
the actual, if you go to the annual meeting prep,
Gotcha.
warrant article 6, I think. Sorry.
And I'm happy to read it aloud again if that's helpful.
6C. Oh, there you go.
Five.
Article 5.
Chair, should I read it again?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. To affirm that the Dresden, in this case, school board will establish policies to support the transitioning of school facilities and operations to renewable sources of electricity and renewable sources of heating, cooling, and transportation. Strategies for moving forward will seek effective and sustainable outcomes while being fiscally responsible.
I'll just repeat comments I made at the Hanover board, that I think that this is sort of meaningless, but certainly harmless. I mean, nobody's going to say they're against sustainability, so it basically says we support sustainability. It has no targets, it has no dates, it has no percentages, it has no teeth. It's just a sense that we support sustainability. I agree, it probably could have better weighted, but it's before us. I believe, we would have better data. We could have a more instructive and harder edged warrant article perhaps next year. It could have waited for next year and we had more information and more time to craft it. But I don't think it is something that needs to go before the community again next year, just because we would have that data. It's not a warrant article that ever needs to go in front of the community in order to accomplish something. It doesn't have a budget. It's just a sense of where we stand and what our priorities are. So I don't think having it this year says we're going to put it before the community 2 years in a row.
And I will note, per Jamie, New Hampshire only requires 25 signatures to get a warrant petition that will go on the ballot.
Any other comments or questions? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I understand the points both that Tom, well, I shouldn't say both, that everyone has made, so Tom, Deborah, and Tony. I'm leaning towards no on this, because I actually think that in some respects the language does matter. And if I do not want to get into a wordsmithing of a warrant article this evening, but I think if I were going to do it, I would probably look to adjust the proposal, because I think it's a little bit unclear as to what voters are actually voting on here. I think it might have been a little bit more clear to say something like, shall the Dresden School Board establish policies, rather than to affirm that we're going to. To me, it's a bit vague. I totally agree with Tony. It has no teeth, and I actually think maybe pausing, getting the results of the facility audits, and then developing something more concrete based on that. To bring before the voters next year actually is in our better interest than to push through the language as it stands right now, which to me is just a little vague and unspecific, which is just another way of saying vague.
So are you proposing?
I'm proposing that we do not consider, if we do consider it, I'm likely to vote no. I'm proposing that we actually spend the next 12 months, doing some deep dives on the facilities audit, determining what the options are for us to move. I do believe that all of my colleagues on the board are in favor of sustainability. I don't think anybody's against it. But I want to do it the right way, and I want to do it in a meaningful way, and I want the town to know that we're doing it in a meaningful way, right? And I'm not sure that this article is accomplishing that goal.
And Kelly McConnell has her hand raised.
Kelly.
Hi, sorry, I have kind of unstable internet here, so hopefully you can hear me. I just wanted to ask what procedurally at this point it is going on the Hanover ballot, but we're deciding whether it goes on the Dresden. Is that sort of procedurally where we're at?
Yeah, so it's already on the Hanover ballot, which is deciding, it's not going to be on the Norwich ballot, and we're deciding whether it's going to also be on the Dresden ballot.
Okay, and so just for my Norwich colleagues, I was actually sort of the one who proposed taking out the numbers at this point for all the reasons you said, that we don't have the data to back the numbers up. And I guess my reason personally for thinking it still had a place, and I always like Neil's wording, the shall the Dresden or shall the board, blah blah blah. I like that better. But Neil wasn't at the Hanover meeting. But I think my reason for that was to sort of affirm that as we're going forward in our strategic plan, this is a central piece of what we're considering. And for me, the teeth, if you will, of this is to say that we will create policy, because that is our main mechanism for doing most things, is creating policy. So that was kind of my thinking personally. But I do understand the objections and the desire to wait until we have more information.
Thank you. Neil?
Yeah, sorry, Rick, and even, I was trying to come up with some language on the fly, but even the language, I don't even like my own language that I just came up with, right? Because this body's responsibility is to develop policy. I don't want to delegate the authority for telling this body to do policy to the electorate, because we're already in that position. That's our role, that's our job, right? We do policy, and we don't need to necessarily be told to do policy, right? And so I think for all of those reasons, I would like the time to reflect and do it the right way, rather than to me right now feels like rushing it to get it on a warrant article. And then I'm just a little bit uncertain as to what do I do with, if those numbers come back and they're small compared to the number of people that voted yes on the budget, like how do I interpret that? What am I doing with the data that I get back from the vote?
Any other comments or questions?
Vidushi has her numbers.
Vidushi?
Yeah, I would just like to say that although I can understand that there are concerns about like the wording of this, I've never voted for a warrant article before, so I don't know what it's like to be in the position of reading this and then voting on something. I do think it's important to make a commitment, and that's what this is doing. I guess that's kind of the teeth of this. And I think we have a lot of sort of work to do in terms of becoming a more sustainable school. And so I think that it would be fine to work on wording right now, but I don't agree with the idea that we should push this off or wait to get more information and write more specific policy, which will take longer anyway. I think putting this on the radar of the voters is really important.
Thank you. Garrett?
I'm lucky enough not to vote on this, but
What did he say? You're lucky enough not to vote on it?
I have to vote on this.
The one time.
My joke just made me lose my train of thought. I mean, it is, yeah, so I guess I agree with this, and Neil always says, and I think over in Norwich, we're always sitting here, I don't want to disagree with any of my members here, because it does seem like committing to numbers, and there's just been no analysis that's been done, but Yushi's comment, that does resonate, because we always ask in Norwich with all of our budget issues over there, what do the taxpayers want? So the question on this warrant article, I guess, is if the schools come out to be atrociously unenvironmental, right, and spewing all sorts, do the voters want us to spend tons of money to get them sustainable? And I guess that's the question. Would this warrant article then basically give us a pathway when all this facility studies come through? So I hear a comment saying, we're going to wait for the facility studies and more data, but would this warrant article, by saying the townspeople who voted to do that, to then say, hey, you know what, our budget may end up being $3 million more because the schools are so out of line with getting to a sustainability by 2020. This is where the young people, right, like here we are, right? It's been raining, and there is a cost to fixing this problem, and we can all sit here and be like, well, it's going to cost too much, it's going to make our budget go more than 3%, and that's what we can only go 3%. But you see what I'm saying? Is that the purpose of this warrant article? Is to and maybe we get rid of all the percentages, or maybe we don't even do it right now, and this requires more thought.
Well, I don't know, at the Hanover School Board meeting last week, we did remove the percentages and the dates.
But is that the purpose of the warrant article, to basically say that, hey, you know what? The townspeople have spoken and they want the school board, if there's major problems, to fix the problems, to get the schools into an environmentally sound or sustainable. That costs a lot of money, but guess what? People have given us, because we're always asking for that in Norwich, I think, right? We're always like, what do people want? How much money do they want us to spend over there on these schools? And when's too much? It's a really hard question to answer.
Lisa?
Yeah, now I'm thoroughly confused about how I'm going to vote, because I was sort of leaning towards this is just an affirmation, that it's an affirmational goal or an aspirational goal. And now I'm suddenly nervous from Garrett's question, because I think having an aspirational goal and having 99% of the voters say, yes, we want to do this, doesn't necessarily give us permission to spend a lot of money to do it. Because I think that sometimes when you attach money to something, people are like, whoa, as we witnessed during the Norwich budget meeting last week. People are for something until it actually comes at a cost. And so now I'm nervous. I don't know if we can interpret a vote for Article 5 as, yes, spend a ton of money, even though philosophically, I think that that's what we should be doing. But
Jim?
So I guess to your comment, right, it's the last part of the warrant article says, while being fiscally responsible. So it doesn't say, yes, spend all the money. And actually, because it doesn't have any, in my opinion, real teeth budget aspects to it. I mean, really, before one of my, which I have to say, I was one of the ones that was cutting to make this adjustment at the Hanover meeting, was because we do have board guidelines that said, come to us with any budget request by October, right? And so this was obviously very much after October as currently written, which would have had more budgeted locations because we would have had goals. Not to mention everything that Thomas said, because we're also both on the facility subcommittee and understanding what the process was that we were anticipating. And knowing that we were kind of already doing this anyways, right? So it's kind of only a downside, right? If it gets voted down, what do we do, kind of thing, which I know what Tom's opinion is, right? But I think to have the question of what's the risk. But because it is more aspirational, because it says fiscally responsible, because because it's just really talking about a policy, who knows what that policy will say, right? I couldn't necessarily rely on it needs to be up by October, give us a deadline, and so and I hear what my other colleagues are saying, kind of letting voters know this is going to be something we're looking at in the future. So that's why I kind of ended up supporting it, right? Even though coming in, I was a little bit more critical about the process, and I was hopeful, but that's kind of how.
Yeah, that's just my lie. So, listening to that's the problem here with this whole. And this is where it's really tricky, because at the end of the day, I see something we're like, oh, it doesn't have any teeth. It's just aspirational. It's not. It's like that's the purpose. Is like. We have a big problem out there. It's going to cost money, and it does need to, right, to get anything to do it. That's why, our federal government spending billions and billions and billions. Like, it takes teeth to solve these problems. That's why I'm wondering, do you need a warrant article that actually has some teeth? Taxpayers are saying, you know what, we are willing to take some money out of our pockets and maybe have our taxes go up to at least try to solve this environment.
This is the last thing I'll say. I think the fact that nobody, no offense, seems to be able to articulate what this article will even do signifies to me that there's no purpose in having the article.
Marcella?
I mean, it signals support with the citizens who have been working on trying to get this on our radar. That is one thing it concretely does. The group of people who got it before us would then know that we support them. It can be concrete.
Tom?
Okay. It's the principle. I don't like taking it on here. It doesn't do anything. I don't think you've articulated that it'll do anything. Okay, which I've told him that I support moving forward with sustainability. If it's just one group, it doesn't make sense to me. But I am getting this.
And kind of just to piggyback on what Marcella said, It's also sort of giving the community awareness that we are looking at it, and we all know we have been looking at it. Jamie's worked very hard, Tom and Kim have been working very hard at it, but that doesn't necessarily mean the community at large knows about it. And, you know, for me, I'm always sort of surprised yet not surprised at how little the community at large knows about what we're up to. And sort of, I hate to say the word advertising, but this sort of does help people know we are looking at it. We're not there yet to have costs and percentages, which is the reason why we took that language out at Hanover, but we are looking at it, and it's not a bad thing for the town to know, the towns to know that we're looking at it without committing ourselves to something. That's it.
What's that? Yeah, anyone in the public have anything to say? Yolanda?
Hi, I'm Yolanda Baumgartner. I live in Hanover, and I'm one of the co-chairs of Sustainable Hanover. So I want to address the question, does it have not enough teeth? Does it say anything? And I think if you pass this, you give the voters a chance to vote on this, you will be really surprised how powerful this statement can be. And I will say so because of our experience with a similar warrant article that happened in 2017, which is this, what we call the Ready for 100 article, which voters responded very positively to. And I will say it was like, for all the things you want to do, it's like having the wind at your back. I mean, it has been an incredible tool. And so I've seen this. I've been on Sustainable Hanover since 2012. 5 years later was this Ready for 100 bill. And now we're 5 years past. And I know the first 5 years, we were working hard on transitioning from fossil fuels, energy efficiency, all the stuff. And we did things. It wasn't like nothing happened. But 5 years after getting this warrant article, same town officials, no big disruptions on your budget, on your taxes for Hanover taxpayers. The town is now 100% on local solar. I mean, it's amazing, and it happened because people worked hard. I mean, there was a lot of work, but as I say, just knowing what the town valued and what they wanted, it was like everybody just thought a little bigger. They just tried harder. And as I said, it was the same people, same town manager, wonderful person, same director of public works. So I guess I just feel like, yes, it's very simple, and yes, it'd be wonderful if you were really willing to commit to, really hard numbers. But I think from the town, I don't think anyone has ever heard this board make a public statement about something, which has been very important to residents. I mean, when I talk to people, they're always thanking us, saying really supportive things. And I can imagine that next year you would have warrant articles that were based on this incredible, great study that you're doing. You're going to know, and you're going to put something forward. And I think that will be like drilled down and really very specific and have numbers and stuff. And that makes total sense, that you kind of declared first where you were headed, and then you've got the pieces. But I will also say that a facility audit and all those recommendations, even as comprehensive as it is, will not give you all the numbers that you need with knowing how you're going to get to 2050 or possibly even 2030, because lots of things will happen. I mean, you're not going to have certainty, so it's going to take a little bit of a leap of faith, less so than back in 2017, because you've got a lot of examples now of organizations that have done what you want to. I know all of you do, because I've heard you individually and in these sessions. I know all of you care about this. And I just feel like this is going to give you a tool, and you will be surprised how well it works.
You just wanted, 3 minutes is up. So.
Okay, well, I'll stop here, but I just wanted to say, it sounds simple, but I think it's very powerful.
Yes.
So I'm Judy Kala, and I'm the other co-chair of Sustainable Hanover. And I guess I want to say just two things. The original purpose of having an article on the warrant is to galvanize political will, as was done in Hanover. I think, and we were hoping that, as Yolanda said, that this would help galvanize political will boards, among our superintendent, among our staff, and our faculty and students to help them know that they're all on the same page, working towards the same goal. And that's the purpose of an article on the warrant. It can also be the purpose of a board policy, which, the Hanover article kind of boiled down to endorsing a policy, and a policy can also do that. But I do think that people who are watching the schools, and I think of students in particular, are aching for some sort of leadership at the board and the administrative level. The other thing I want to point out in terms of the students, the students have worked hard. They had a plan for Hanover High School several years ago having to do with sustainability. I don't know how much progress has been going on that, but we know that we're here to educate students. That's what the school is for. But the fact of the matter is there are lots of ways to educate students, and it's not just in the classroom. They look at our leadership, they look at our ability to take risks, they look at our ability to have goals. Would we ask students to sort of come into the classroom and just kind of, we'd like you to learn this, but there'll be no exams, there'll be no accountability. How much do you think would get done? And part of it is creating some accountability, whether it's public or not, so that people feel maybe a little scared, maybe a little excited to get this done. And I think that without that, it'll certainly happen more slowly, if it happens at all.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? So, moving on to annual meeting prep. Has anyone given any thoughts on which warrant articles they would like to present at the Dresden meeting? Yeah.
I will do the budget warrant article. I know you all wanted it.
So Article 4.
I will do Article 4.
Who was involved
Thank
with
you, Kim.
Who's involved on the negotiations?
I will suggest somebody else, but I wasn't.
Kelly, Lily, and Tony.
Would you take the Article 3?
Sure.
Okay.
Who was that?
Lily's going to take Article 3.
Okay, thank you.
Article 2. Deb?
Sure.
Article 1. That's probably the easiest.
Yeah.
Tony? And Article 5, if it passes tonight. Okay, so the.
No, Article 6.
Article 6,
We don't read that.
We have a school board meeting on the 28th of February. When is the?
The 7th.
27th.
27th, okay. So, yes.
Oh, hold on, I'm sorry, that's not right.
March 2nd. March 2nd is our meeting.
So the budget meeting is March 2nd at the high school?
It says Thursday, March 2nd at 7 p.m. at Hanover High School Auditorium in the Dresden phase.
Okay. Okay.
I think we should have Deb give us a reminder about vote counters. That's part of our preparation.
Don't forget, we need people to count the votes afterwards who are not on the ballot.
I'll not do it. I'll do it.
So who's up for, on Hanover?
Positions on Kim and Marcella.
Kim and Marcella. Norwich is,
Me.
there's Lisa, Tom, you're stepping down.
I can count those.
That's it, just two from Hanover, I mean, two from Norwich? Okay.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Jamie.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure I heard who was doing two.
Two was,
Deb
Deb Nelson.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I thought you said Ben, but then Ben, you would do.
Article 1 is Tony, and if Article 6 passes, Ben will take, or I mean, sorry, Article 5, Ben will take that one.
Okay, so I wanted to answer a question that somebody had on Article 1. It is written correctly, and it is antiquated. It is part of the original interstate agreement that existed prior to the law in New Hampshire requiring school districts and towns to have actual paid auditors or paid audits, if you will. So when the interstate agreement was signed and entered into, it actually had auditors that were elected that would come in and check out the books, you know, at the end of the year. So that part of our agreement, our interstate agreement, really needs to be updated, because now we actually, you know, it's a requirement in the state of New Hampshire that you have a professional audit done every year. So it is written correctly. Sometimes people actually get written in and get formally elected, and then they contact us, and I explain that's an antiquated piece of our our agreement between Norwich and Hanover, and that it's really formally done, and that they don't need to come in and do much, but they're more than welcome to come in and look through them if they want. So that's what number 1 is about. But we do still elect the one-year terms of moderator, clerk, and treasurer, and that's a state. It's required that those are elected.
Thank you. Deb.
Can I ask a quick question on that line? Is it required that the moderator and the clerk be only for a one-year term? Because people have been grumpy about the fact that the moderator and the clerk are on the ballot and they are standing at the voting machines. I'm not grumpy about it, but there are grumpier people out there who think they shouldn't be.
Yeah, that's, you see that, I think, in towns as well.
Can we change it? Is it changeable? And how do we?
Kim?
That's what I was going to talk about, actually. So both the auditor and the changing the terms. I do know that other towns, even this year, are putting on warrant articles. While I'm not suggesting that for this year, but I was going to bring up tonight that we might want to think about for next year what the process would be if we would extend. I believe what other towns are doing are just asking a warrant article to extend the term of a moderator and a clerk to either 2 years, 3 years, whatever we think is an appropriate amount of time, so that they're not always on the ballot, even though what their job is to also supervise elections. It's always kind of a challenging thing. And yeah, and I don't know the process because of our unicorn interstate status about changing the auditor piece. But I think that that's a good point that Jamie brings up too, is that it's, I mean, I don't think it's even prudent to have an auditor that's elected, right? We know how complicated our financial.
So next year, we can potentially change this? Okay.
Yeah, we need to look at the interstate agreement and see what the term is discussed in there. I don't remember on the top of my head, but we'll double check it. And if that's not set in stone in that agreement, then we would follow New Hampshire law.
Okay. So, everyone's set for the meeting on March 2nd. Any questions? Okay. why don't we pull item E out and vote on that separately? So does someone want to make a consent motion for B through, why don't we just do B through D, and then we'll do individual votes on the last three items? Kim, or Chris, Lisa.
Go, Chris.
Lisa.
Whoever I am. Move to approve items B, C, and D by consent.
Second, Deb. So I'll just note that Kim made some modifications or edits to the minutes, just clarifying some points. So.
It was to clarify what was presented in the budget.
Yep. Okay.
We'll assume you were correct.
So Deb seconded it. Neil?
O'Gallagher, yes.
Yes.
Sherman, yes.
Here, yes.
Johnson, yes.
Teeny, yes.
Christie, yes.
Hartman, yes.
Nelson, yes.
Puglisi, yes.
Kelly?
McConnell, yes.
Okay, moving on to item E, approval of the sustainability warrant. Do I have a motion? Ben?
Move to approve adding the following warrant article, which I think is supposed to be Article 6.
Yes.
Article
Not
5.
nine.
Is it
Five.
Article
5, not
It's
9.
Article 9 on Hanover, so
Okay.
Article 5.
To affirm that the Dresden School Board will establish policies to support the transitioning of school facilities and operations to renewable sources of electricity and renewable sources of heating/cooling and transportation. Strategies for moving forward will seek effective and sustainable outcomes while being fiscally responsible.
In a second, yeah. Any comments or questions? Okay, Neil?
O'Dell, no.
Sherman, yes. Here, yes.
Johnson, yes.
Teeny, yes.
Christie, yes.
Hartman, yes.
Nelson, yes.
Puglisi, yes.
Kelly?
McConnell, yes.
Thank you. This, my 7 years on the school board, this is one of the more divisive issues. That's not divisive.
This is
I get
not
it.
divisive
I'm
at all.
fully for
Like,
this.
I support the aspirational goal. I think that this, this doesn't hit the mark.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I used the wrong word, divisive. One of the
Yes.
more talked about. Okay, moving on to approval of the substitute teacher pay increase. Did Norwich vote on this?
No.
No. So is that going to be an issue, Jamie?
No,
Or
because we need to look at the Norwich one differently because the state of Vermont passed a law about minimum wage.
Oh, that's right. The minimum wage is close to what we're now setting as our pay. Okay.
Absolutely.
Do we have a motion to approve item F? Deb?
Move to increase the Dresden substitute teacher pay from $100 per day to $125 per day, effective February 1st, 2023.
Second. Lily?
But, so can I just briefly, the budgetary impact of doing this?
I believe it was, go
So
ahead.
we discussed this last meeting. So it was looked at, so first, it's not just so tell you the headline and then the details. So the headline is across all districts, Norwich, Dresden, and Hanover, it would be a total of 30,000 annual increase. And so you can kind of visualize your share of that in each district. What it's looked at, it's not even just how many subs we do have, because obviously we don't have enough. It's how many hours did we need to fill, and that would be the difference if we filled all of those hours that we needed to fill. And keep in mind there's some pay differentials that we're already paying, right? But this is not even really including that. It's just how many hours in those sub pay. So that's how it was discussed.
Lisa?
Yeah, I could go back and read the minutes again, but I'll ask the question instead. I thought we also talked about raising it to $125 per day for the educational assistants, not just the substitute teachers. And so why does it not say substitute teachers and ed assistants? Thank you, Jay.
We did talk about that, but we decided that we were really talking about our substitute teacher pay. And one of the reasons that we deferred on our support staff is because we got to be careful that we don't pay substitutes more than we're paying our actual ed assistants. And if we raise it to 125, we'd have some of our ed assistants who are on the lower end of the scale would be outstripped.
I had forgotten that part of it.
So we're going to discuss that. We'll address that, but we're looking at that as a later adventure, and we're thinking actually in calculating what that line is. It looks like $100 a day, keeping that $25 difference between teachers and ed assistants will keep us safe that way.
Okay.
But we're not ready for that.
So
yet.
we've just sort of tabled it rather than saying that we're not going to give them raises.
And we actually talked to the HSS. We had an informal meeting today where we discussed some of this.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, and this was what the budget committee recommended, so I'm just going, okay.
Any other comments or questions? Neil?
Cordelia, yes?
Herman, yes.
Yes.
Johnson, yes.
Heaney, yes.
Christie, yes.
Hartman, yes.
Nelson, yes?
Siglacy, yes.
Kelly?
Kelly, I think lost her connection or stepped out.
I'm not sure to pick up. Okay.
She did confirm for the record, I'm in favor. I don't know if that counts or not.
Does that count or not?
I've written that, probably
Okay. Moving on to 7G. Does someone want to make a motion? Yeah.
Move to direct district administration and support staff negotiations committee, if necessary, to investigate education assistant staffing issues, especially related to special education services, and advise the board with corrective actions, if any, period.
Lisa, second. Any comments or questions?
Yeah, remind me, so how does this affect the current contract? This would reopen negotiations if it was decided that?
Jeff?
Yeah, I would say there's no, that would be a corrective action potentially, and that would obviously be a decision of the board itself if we were to go that route. And because anything that would increase our expenditures in this area would have to go before the voters. We're talking about the subsequent year's budget in all likelihood. But I think such an investigation could get at some things that we might be able to do shorter term to try to increase our competitiveness in the labor market for folks in these positions. And it's going to open the door, I think, to some conversations with our ed assistants to see if there are other things we can do to both recruit and retain people in these positions.
Any other comments or questions? Yeah.
Cordelia, yes?
Yes.
Herman, yes. Barry, yes.
Johnson, yes.
Heaney, yes.
Christie, yes.
Hartman, yes.
Nelson, yes?
Siglacy, yes.
Joe, still done? Okay. So we can just do regular voting after this. Okay. Moving on to reports and communications. I don't really have anything to report other than our next meeting is the 28th. And over the next month or so, the people that have volunteered to do the different warrants will be working with Jamie to fashion comments or prepare for that. Any committee reports? Athletic Advisory Committee. Is that, did you say that? It was posted there, so I just guessed it was the Athletic Advisory Committee.
Oh, all right. I had actually was writing something because I figured it'd be a good time to report. And Tony, feel free to weigh in too, just because you also serve on this committee. I figured we met last spring. I think I told everybody. Obviously, the directive is fairly vague. It's basically to help the athletic director with the department policies and practices that were related to students. So after some meetings, our kind of pillars really are is helping Megan as necessary with the athletic budget, one of which is related to kind of capital improvements and replacement schedules. You know, that's kind of not really a priority right now, just given the fact that we've got the track and the baseball field projects undergoing and the facilities underway. Sports funding is also another one that she's asked us to help with, just with regards to how all the sports are funded within the high school, because as you guys looked at the budget, there's very little coming from our budget, frankly, for the individual sports teams that come from a lot of different areas. So there's a lot to unpack there potentially. But the big one that we have been focused on the past few meetings, and this has really been a discussion, I think that, unbeknownst to me, but I guess as I've talked to more people, it's been going on for years. And it's really come front and center just because last spring, a group of students came over from RMS with a really concise studies showing that there was a significant amount of support from the student body over there, including in a lot of rationale and reasons, including access to sports, the cost of participating in a lot of our club sports in the area are very high, requirements placed on those students and reasons why some of them can't participate, like, their parents can't drive them to Massachusetts every weekend for sport, for the, games and whatnot. So, and then most recently, there's just been some issues with the Hanover Rec Department that I think I've highlighted, which people have reached out to me on the advisory chair, but some of which were a little surprising, I think, just maybe not necessarily their fault, but due to some lack of coaching. And it became clear too that there's really been a lack of programs going on. So, for example, I've heard that there was no girls soccer program because there was no coaching. I also understand, firsthand a little bit that the basketball program has had some very significant issues getting off the ground this winter, both boys and girls. I believe that they're all up and running now, but it was significant delays, including one team being coached by the guy who actually runs the Hanover Rec Department sports area. So our most recent meetings, we've been very lucky to have a couple people attend who actually ran the Lebanon program. So we've been kind of in the data gathering stages. One of my to-dos is to reach out to the gentleman who runs the Claremont Middle School program, because we gather that he's doing a bang-up job down there. And our goal basically is to, at some, over time, it's going to take some time, but put some data together as far as what costs are with the programs around us, what sports they offer, what sports we might want to offer here, what sports we don't want to offer here just because they're already being attended to okay, and then those facilities. So our next meeting, for example, is going to be talking about some of the choice of sports as well as some of the facilities requirements. Again, it's a long thing, but I think it's, Tim also feels free to weigh in because Tim's been to all the meetings too, is on the committee, but that's been one of the items that's going to come front and center that we're spending a little time unpacking.
Any comments or questions? Thank you.
Just obviously important people up to speed on what we're doing.
Check. Oh, Jim.
Do another committee.
Oh, sure.
So the Dresden Finance Committee, right? So they're basically just the Hanover Finance Committee, as no Norwich members are currently appointed to that. But they did meet, so the Hanover Finance Committee opined on the Dresden budget, and I'm happy to report that on January 17th, it was a unanimous decision to support the Dresden budget. I guess started a little bit of a marketing campaign as last night the Hanover Select Board had a meeting where they were talking about their budget, which I'll give you an update on that. And we kind of used public comment to advertise. Both Kari Asmus, the chair of the Hanover Finance Committee, and I, kind of talked a little bit, our 2 minutes worth of the support Dresden budget and for people to come out to vote on March 7th. And just give you just a real what our towns look at from the Hanover side. The board, the select board has had a challenging budget process this year as their finance director just started yesterday full time. And so they did set a guideline of 6 to 7% increase, kind of similar to what we're seeing in the tax rate increase on the Hanover side for the education. So just want to give you a quick update on that, and the good news that that the finance committee is in support.
Thank you. Lisa.
Another quick committee report since Kelly's still offline.
She's gone.
Yeah. The costing committee met this morning for the second time, and we have another meeting in 2 weeks. We have some questions for the athletic committee, so be prepared. We'll be sending them to you, but we're looking at, again, just trying to figure out what the out-of-pocket costs are for families and teachers to have their kids participate fully in our school system.
Thank you. Any comments or questions for Lisa? Okay, moving on to superintendent's report, Jay.
Thanks, Rick. I noticed there are 0 attendees out there in Zoom land. So I feel sort of like one of those legislators on C-SPAN when they get unlimited time to make their remarks, but
Not unlimited.
yeah, exactly.
Simulate the House of Representatives.
Yeah, well, so I want to address something that occurs. Yeah, be ready to gavel me or give me the hook, because I don't know. I've been making snow day calls, geez, for probably a third of my life now. It's kind of weird. And when I came to this district, it was a real relief because I learned that the business manager was doing that.
Hey, Jamie.
But Jamie and I have an interesting partnership when it comes to predictions of bad weather. We're on the phone together at 5 in the morning. Recently, our superintendent group has begun talking at 4:30. I know that at 4:30, Jamie's on the phone with the road crews. We're trying to get in touch with the road crews. And then we kind of put our heads together and we share what we've been able to glean in trying to make the determination about whether or not we should have school. And I'd say it probably would have bothered me years ago. And Julie's comments about all the parents making their own Monday morning quarterbacking observations about our call. I just don't think people get what it's like to have to make that decision. And I could read a stream of texts at 4:30 this past storm that we had. The regional superintendents, and I'd say it's most of us in the Upper Valley on both sides of the river, are on text, all sharing what our road crews are saying, what we're hearing from our business administrators. And the last couple of them have happened to fall on a Friday. So I was kind of amused when I heard that some parents on Facebook or someplace were speculating that our staff are trying to get days off or extend weekends. And I can promise you that if they extend their weekend now, they're extending their work year into the summer more. So that's not a thing. Not only that, teachers and staff have no say whatsoever in the call. It's made purely by Jamie and me. And we take into account not just what the weather looks like outside your window in downtown Hanover or Norwich, but we hear what's happening on the higher elevations. We have a lot of big hills in this town. Our road crews are stretched thin. And even if they get it plowed, when we have a storm that starts in the wee hours of the morning, and they plow it and they get it clear at 5 a.m., when the buses are rolling at 6:30, it's a different story. Or even if they're in the first call we had, if things look great in the morning, but there's a storm pending and we're watching the big blob on the radar come at us, and 2/3 of the districts in both states have already called off, it becomes a pretty easy call. The last couple have been really difficult. They've been 50-50. Our road crews have said, well, we think we can get them plowed in time for the buses, but we're worried about what's going to come next. Well, it's not just us. Unfortunately, most of our staff can't afford to live in Norwich and Hanover, and so they drive in from other towns. And in many of those towns, in the last several of these calls, school's been canceled the night before even. And so our staff, who are already stretched thin and in many jobs were understaffed, are scrambling to figure out what they're going to do to provide childcare for their own home district. And so it's a really complicated matter, and it's not an easy decision. And for the Facebook folks that are taking a vote, if you want to make this decision, I would take volunteers and I'll put you on the phone at 4:30 and you can talk to the other superintendents and you can talk to the road crews. We make if it's a 50-50 call and we're deciding whether or not to put our employees and our students at risk, I'll promise you from this day through this winter and every other winter I'm here, I'll make the call to protect our kids above all. And I know Jamie feels exactly the same way. And so it gets tiring being questioned, but I was happy to see Facebook was 60% or so in favor of our call. I'm happy with 50-50. That's my report.
I would just like to add, as somebody who has been teaching for a really, really, really long time, I think maybe people have forgotten the horrible tragedy at Mascoma High School, probably 20 years ago now, where the driver of the car, a student at Mascoma High School, went off the road and an exchange student was killed in the accident. And stop it, people. Too many kids drive themselves to school.
Tim.
I would just say too, as an administrator in the district, I'm really thankful for the way that Jay and Jamie do this, and especially what Jay talked about in terms of the weather is okay in the morning, but it looks like it might get bad. From having been in a situation, what you really don't want is the students to get to school and then not be able to get home on a Friday. It's just a bad situation all the way around. And there's at that point, there's no good way out. Right? If the roads are icy and we can't get students home, or the parents can't get to pick people up, it just gets really bad. So we've said that, and I wrote something to our parents, and we have parents who talk about people are missing school. The school is closed. There's no school to miss, right? We're pretty good at adapting and moving forward, and even Julie having to deal with all the finals. People will move forward. Heck, we did it however many years, during COVID, wasn't that long ago, where we made up however many days. So 1 or 2 days here and there really shouldn't be that big a deal. And I would say this too, from having been other places, this is one of the great joys in New England, is these sort of days, snow days that come out of nowhere. How excited everybody is. You can go play in the snow. We had all of our teachers sending us stuff.
Except in April.
Huh?
By April, I think we're done.
Yeah, April we're done. But we're still in January. It'd be a different speech maybe. So thank you.
Any other,
I am fielding a lot of questions as to when the last day of school is going to be. Do you know when you might have an inkling for that?
Sure. We have a meeting on Friday to go over our data. Now, it's different in Vermont and New Hampshire, although I have an undated, so I kind of interpret it as an unlimited permission from Vermont to use the New Hampshire system for clocking instructional time. Although that's now public on video, so maybe that will change. But we're going to calculate we can count hours. We need 990 hours at the secondary level and 945 hours at the elementary level, according to the New Hampshire rules. We were okay on those hours after day number 3. So we're probably getting to the point where we're probably going to have some makeups, but we'll have information for folks, and I'll send out a message to families on Friday.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Sure.
To that? It would be helpful as someone who has booked travel for the Saturday after school is supposed to get out and can't change it now,
Correct.
to just have a reminder of what our kids can do to not be left behind in terms of final exams. Because at this point, I'm pretty sure they're going to miss a day of school.
Sure.
I don't know what the process is for.
Well, I think our principals will probably be better equipped to address what happens on that last day of school, but it's typically a half day. And I don't believe we're doing exams on that half day. You do exams?
We do.
I'm preparing for 3 more snow days and.
Sure.
We're like the no fun place, but there's always a reschedule exam.
Okay.
Okay.
There's a reschedule exam form, so.
Great. Okay, so yeah, we'll work with folks. And we do have a different, there are 2 different things at work here too. So there's student instructional hours, and then there's also staff contractual obligations for days. And so we're going to have a situation this year where our students will finish, because some of those hours will have them not have to be here for the full 185. But our teachers will still be responsible for that. So we'll have, there's plenty to do. So I'm sure there'll be plenty of professional development opportunities with that additional time on those makeups.
Jay, can you remind us all that Fridays, the last day of school currently is Friday, June 16th. Monday, June 19th is Juneteenth, which is a holiday.
Federal holiday, correct.
So if we were to go into extra days, would students go to school on that Monday?
In all likelihood, not. But we haven't made a final determination on that. My inclination would be no.
Kim.
I don't know, Jay or Jamie, if you could speak to some questions I got as well, right, was kind of questioning about maybe our public works department in either Hanover, Norwich, but also maybe elsewhere, might be a little bit more short-staffed than they typically have been, and so maybe it's been a little harder to clean the road. So maybe you think via the weather it looks okay, but just getting the safety roads, if there's anything you're seeing that I think that might be helpful context too.
No, I would say our road crews have been giving us really positive feedback, and that it's been, Jamie can probably address this in greater detail, but like there have been staffing challenges I know that have been pretty well publicized that we've seen, but I think they're okay now. And on these last couple of calls, our road crews have said we can get it plowed. it's been their concern about the follow-on snow after getting the cloud prior to the beginning of the run that's been challenging. So I'm not sure where they are staffing-wise, but I think they're able to get things done for us. It's just the timing of these storms has been as bad as it can possibly be for us to make this decision. It's not like when we get, a big, huge storm that comes in the day, so we can warn people the day before and we can close ahead of time. It's just been really tough, and it's always on a Friday. So somebody might want us to have long weekends, but it's not us.
So what's the sense for tomorrow's storm?
Yeah,
Not looking good. They're calling for anywhere from, I've seen forecasts from 9 to 12 inches, and on top of it, the potential for freezing rain with the snow. And
But
again,
it's not starting until the afternoon.
it's supposed to start late tomorrow,
Okay.
Which they define. I've seen anything from like 3 o'clock to 7 o'clock. But then that storm is supposed to go right through Thursday. So Jamie and I will do exactly what we've been doing. We have a New Hampshire Homeland Security emergency management briefing. They'll go through it with everybody in the state. A bunch of folks will call up the night before. We'll probably decide to get up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning and do our usual routine. Unless it's bad enough that evening that we can call it the night before, in which case we'll do what we have to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just say, I mean, I appreciate all of the effort and the thought and the process that you guys put behind this, and maybe just, for my colleagues, a lot of you are getting questions from parents about what's going on. This just reinforces the notion, then you just redirect those questions to Jay, right there. That's his foray. That's what we've hired him to do. And to the extent that, the board is not the one calling snow days. The board is not the one saying how many days of instruction students need to have.
Right.
The board is not the one to say then what is the final day of school going to be. Those questions can all go to Jay.
You can take that from us if you'd like.
Nope.
Any other comments or questions? Jay, do you have anything? Oh, here.
Living where we do, 10 minutes out of downtown Norwich, but you absolutely made the right calls on both those days.
Oh, thank you.
Record, that was the absolute right call, because both days, midway through the day, it was just pounding. And people don't realize it, because I did drive into Hanover, and the Hanover streets are just kind of wet, but there is oftentimes a 3 to 4 degree difference 10 minutes outside of Norwich when you go from the elevation. So the calls were the absolute right calls both those days.
And I live on Hubby, and I didn't think you made the right call.
Yeah, but you've got a speed trap going through there apparently,
So I'll be calling you at 4:30 in the morning tomorrow.
My phone is unlisted. Ben.
I'm up in the hills. I'm the Hanover equivalent of Garrett and I Greenfold for both days. They were hard.
I wonder if Jamie, I don't know, Jamie, if you have anything to add, but.
Yeah, I have a lot to add.
The area of the
all kidding aside, transportation's been challenging, not only with the weather, but everybody has to understand that you have one driver on every single school bus with 50 to 60 children, okay? One driver. Some of these buses might have an aide on board, all right? So I'll remind people the second or third year I was here, we were aggressive. We said to run buses. We had a bus slide backwards down a hill into a telephone pole because of the ice on the road. And that was a late February or early March call. So thank God, as I got that phone call, there were no children on board yet. It was a BA's worst nightmare. The whole time buses are rolling, if it's snowing, I am sitting on pins and needles until those buses clear every school, and I know every kid is safe. What the people who want to armchair quarterback or take polls or surveys online don't understand is the level of responsibility that Jay and I have every single time we make a decision where we don't have a crystal ball. There are 2,000 lives at stake. And as I answered 2 or 3 parents who asked me the question, one life lost is one too many. We lost a teacher, okay, who was killed in the 70s. where schools could run even if buses weren't running. And so those people were required to come in. There are people on staff here at Hanover and Dresden School District and Norwich who remember those things. And thank God for them, because it hurts my heart when somebody thinks that we've made a frivolous call. And thank God for the staff that we have and the parents that we have. I want to thank them publicly for the ones who have reached out and thanked us for being thoughtful and keeping their children safe. Okay, you could not imagine what kind of guilt we would have to deal with if we made a call where somebody was hurt or worse. Okay, so all of the people who think this is a game need to think about that. All right, and come sit with us some morning from 4:45 to 20:06 when Jay and I are going back and forth, because maybe we're not in agreement. But you know, at the end of the day, as he said, we will always err on the side of caution, and we will make a call to close before we run and play chicken with Mother Nature. So thank you for bringing it up. And yeah, it's a challenge, and it's a challenge for the drivers who, God forbid, there's an issue. They are alone with 40, 50, 60 scared children.
Any other comments or questions? Jay, are you done?
I'm done. I do want to say that I do have need of a brief non-public, and I have made the appropriate exception. If you refresh your screen for whoever wants to make that motion when the time comes.
I wasn't done with my report. That was just transportation.
Go ahead, Kim.
Oh, no, let Jamie do her report.
Well, next up is Robin.
Robin's next. Okay.
I don't know if I want to follow this.
Okay, well, we're just not as dire, but we did have an instructional coaching conference that 28 people are supposed to attend on Thursday. That's already been canceled due to the weather, so people are already thinking about it, and I've had so many teachers emailing about that over the past couple of days saying, what's going to happen? And they just sent out an email to them and said they're postponing it and moving it to a date in March. So but we will have our follow-up 2-day conference in June, and we were talking about that today too, based on the weather that we're having. So, but I have about 40 people signed up for that now, which is really great. It's such a high number, so I'm really excited about that. And we are paying for that through grant funds from each of the districts. And then we recently held our K through 12 social studies meeting. We looked at C3 standards. We had teachers look at the areas that they felt like we are doing really well with and some areas for growth. And then next week we'll hold our K through 12 science meeting. At that meeting, we'll look at the state assessment data for the past 3 years and do some analysis with that. There's no social studies data, so we were not able to look at any social studies data, but I'm looking forward to looking at the science data. We have grades 5, 8, and 11 that we'll take a look at. And I've been doing mixed groups of grade level teachers from elementary, middle, and high school, so we can also talk about some of the curricular pieces that go with what we're seeing with that data. So that's been really productive. And then we have lots of curriculum work going on. We have a big high school day coming up in March when we hold the SAT test. So many of the departments are free on that day, so we'll do curriculum work during that time as well. I'm happy to answer any questions. And I am thankful that I don't have to make the snow call here, because I used to have to do that at Kearsarge sometimes, and that is a huge district. And we would have snow, rain, freezing rain, all in, one area. And I always hated making that call. And then I'd have to do the same thing that Jamie does and make the recording. And hope, oh no, I'd just say, good morning, everyone. So, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any comments or questions?
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Robin.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jamie.
Okay, on a brighter note, we have ordered the scoreboard, yay, this year.
Wow.
We have 2 RFPs for the baseball field and the track, which should be posted by next Monday or Tuesday. We will be meeting with our immediate Hovey Lane, I think it's Hovey Lane, right directly behind the track. If it's not, apologies. With our immediate Hovey Lane neighbor, and once we determine what time that is this Friday, I will let the board members know and try to reach out to the other neighbors if they want to attend. The gentleman did reach out and say, hey, what's going on? Where are you at? So we're happy to meet with him and have a chat. The financials, we're getting everything updated, so we'll report out on the fiscal year projected year end by the next meeting. I hope to do that. The other thing I would love, well, no, it's probably a leadership discussion. Never mind, we won't go there. Food service is rolling along. Kids seem to love, we had a froyo machine put in this year, and there's gummy bears everywhere because apparently they put them on frozen yogurt. It's a hit. What else is going on? Custodial and maintenance. You know, we're down in staff and custodial, but we've been able to outsource. So things seem to be going well at the high school with that arrangement. We currently, I think, have 4 of our own custodians on staff and 4 outsourced folks right now, between day and night shift, and it seems to be doing pretty well. Maintenance is trying to keep caught up. I'll be reaching out to the folks at Bureau Veritas probably tomorrow. I haven't had a chance to do that, to see where our reports are, because I've not heard a peep. I got the one back about the Dresden fields, but Tony and I wanted to have a discussion before we brought that forward, and we'd like to bring them all at the same time. We know we have a few projects that are hanging, and we'll get to them as soon as we can. So if anybody has any questions or concerns about anything, they can email us and we'll answer the questions.
Thank you. Any comments for Kim?
Jamie, can you speak about the town of Norwich is considering moving back the tax collection date by a couple of weeks? And I know that you had sent a memo. Do you mind just kind of updating the board about what the impact would be for Dresden financials?
Sure. So we're still figuring that out, right? But you know, I've had some interaction back and forth with the select board chair, and of course our treasurer Cheryl Lindbergh is very involved because she's also treasurer of the town of Norwich. So they were looking at, I think now they collect most of the monies in August, and then usually they make a large payment to us in the August timeframe. It's usually either, excuse me, a third or half of what their liability is, because historically Norwich has sent money in August and February. Although during the year of COVID, we did make this shift a little bit because there was some challenges in getting tax levies out in Vermont during COVID. So we had made an arrangement in speaking with the town of Hanover, where the town of Hanover did a little bit heavier remittance in August. And then we gave them a little breather through September and October because Norwich picked up that larger payment at that point. And so we have made arrangements in the past between the 2 towns on the payment schedules. So I don't foresee that it would be a huge problem if it passes. They're very aware of what our liability is in that month of August. So their larger payment in August has been great because, you know, our payrolls kick off, our first big payrolls kick off usually that last Friday in August, I think. So I've given them all the historical data and told them that, you know, if in conversation with Hanover, it didn't work for Hanover, they would have to try to probably find a couple million for that August payment. And then they could probably make, you know, different payment arrangements for the balance. So we're working through it. They have the information.
Kim,
Sorry, do we know why? I live in Norwich, I didn't hear about this. Do we know why they want to do this? It seems kind of, I mean, there may be no reason why.
I think it was okay, so last year in June, I think it was, I was dropping off the permit for the baseball field. And I had a quick discussion with Rod and the town manager and the finance director, who had some folks sending concerns about the timing of the payment because of challenges I think they were having with something to do with their mortgages. I'm not sure I completely understood that. And
Kim may have the answer. Kim may have the answer.
Okay, well, at that point in time, they asked me if I thought it would be okay to talk about doing for this fiscal year. And I said it would be okay to have the conversation to see if we could change schedules, but I think they just ran forward with it without having the, more in-depth conversation about it. But here we are.
Kim?
Yeah, so I think, I hesitated on the dates, but I think it's currently on August 12th or something like that.
11th or 12th.
Or 11th or 12th, and the warrant that was at least, or let me just say, the warrant I think will be approved, or at least scheduled to be discussed tomorrow at the Norwich Select Board.
Sorry, it was moved to Thursday.
Oh, moved to the meeting was, okay, moved to Thursday, but they voted in principle on the action to move it to August 30th. It might not seem like a big deal, right? But as you know, it's more of a cash flow issue. And I know Cheryl Lindbergh, who's our Dresden treasurer, has voiced concerns about it. Jamie, I know, said, we need $2 million or so. We do have Hanover, right? Which is great because, but also, right, there's some changes and challenges if this is going to be a continual thing. And so the kind of the initial, and everyone correct me where I get off here, is in particular with the date that has been the same date for a long time, but for whatever reason, the last couple of years, or at least last year, was challenging because some members receive refunds that are refunded via the state. So if you are eligible to receive a discount on your property taxes for whatever reason, I don't know all the reasons, but I would imagine either low income, age related, maybe veteran status. You can imagine the different types that you might be eligible for a refund. That actual refund coming back from the state occurred after the time that bills had to be sent out to residents. So essentially, if you were one of those members who received or eligible for a refund, what had happened in prior years was essentially the town was kind of taking it off at the beginning and kind of assuming the money will come in. But what was changed was this past year that the decision was made, we don't want to kind of give a little mini loan, right, assuming the state will come. So they charged fully funded what the tax bill would be, and then kind of made it up. That was the first payment, and then made it up on the second payment, basically got a huge credit. But it was a challenge or surprise to those who had kind of been receiving the net bill than the full bill. And so by making the change to delaying, they're hoping that in those days they'll get the actual state funds back, and so they won't have to be in the position of making these like mini loans or kind of assuming that. Feel free to correct me, but I think that is the issue, and that's what they're trying to address by this, which doesn't affect and the mortgages piece is that, people kind of set it and forget it, right, with their mortgage payments. And so some of these things don't fully click in when when they basically get billed. So that was the issue. Why I bring up the question, right, is because I want to know what it impacts us, right? So if we delay a couple of weeks, I want to make sure we're still able to make payroll and understanding what that, kind of impact is to that decision, and whether we need to have other conversations about it or whether we need to have an opinion on it at all. And so that's why I'm just bringing it up, because I just didn't know what.
I should just say this whole conversation.
Yeah, I mean,
we pay our taxes twice a year over there, and therefore they have plenty of money to pay taxes to the schools.
yeah, and actually, it's a question for Jamie, and I believe I've heard this before, because when we were looking at COVID, and because yeah, I'm not saying I'm not picking on the town of Norwich. Town of Hanover also considered, delaying because of COVID and whatever. So we had this discussion a little bit. So I am familiar that, it's still a bill that the town owes the school when we kind of send the invoice, and if they don't have the funds, they would have to borrow to pay us. At least on the Hanover side, I don't know what's in Norwich, and Jamie has it.
Yeah, the law in Vermont is different than New Hampshire, Kim. In Vermont, they don't have to remit tax receipts. I think it's until 20 days thereafter the last due date. So there is a grace period for having to remit that you collect. Whereas in New Hampshire, the state law says you can demand full payment on July 1. I don't know of any school districts that do that. Most of them, the towns pay monthly or biweekly in New Hampshire. But you can, as a New Hampshire school district, demand payment in full. But that's crazy.
So bottom line is
we're working through it. And it's a finance department, they asked the town of Norwich, they've been very good, that, the chair reached out and asked, what are the challenges? What are the questions? What do we need to know? And so I shared that information with her. She wondered if it needed a vote of the Dresden School Board. And I said, no, it's a finance department. It's my head if we have enough money or not to make our bills, right? So it's usually passed, been a decision that the business administrator has worked out with the finance managers at both towns. Similar to what we did with COVID, right? With giving Hanover a breather, right, through a few months, because they picked up a heavier payment in September, and then Norwich picked up for end of September and October. So I think it's, I think it's workable. Yeah, and I won't let us default, so we should be okay.
So my bottom line is, right, so those in Norwich will be likely, if the warrant gets adopted by the select board on Thursday, which it seems like it will be in some form, we might get questions, how does it impact the school, to make the decision. So I just want to make sure we knew about it, and yeah.
Thank you, Kim. Any comments or questions? Anything else, Jamie? Nope. Okay, thank you. So apparently we've got to move into non-public. Would someone like to make a motion? Ben?
Ellen McConnell is back with us as well. Move to enter the non-public session at 8:49 p.m. under RSA 91A3 Roman numeral 2A, dismissal, promotion, or compensation of an employee.
Lisa?
Second.
Neil?
Odell, yes?
Simon, yes.
There, yes.
Johnson, yes.
Tina, yes.
Christie, yes.
Hartman, yes.
Nelson, yes.
Leslie, yes.
Kelly?
McCall, yes.
So for people that are still online, we'll be back in a few minutes.
Yeah. Is anyone still online?
No.
Okay.
So, but we will need somebody to bring Kelly in with us if they could.
Kelly, I'll call you in a minute.
Yeah, but she carved
2120.
Jam, are we good?
The public may address the board. Okay, hearing nothing, we're moving on. Please let me know if you have any agenda topics for our February 28th meeting. And at this point, if someone make a motion to adjourn. Yeah,
I move to adjourn at 9:20.
Lisa.
I'll second.
Leo.
Yes, yes.
I'm an yes on this.
Gary, yes.
Johnson, yes.
Keeney, yes.
Christie, yes.
Hartman, yes.
Nelson, yes.
DeBlassie, yes.
Kelly's still on, still in the panel, still
I'm
on.
gonna put it on the agenda, or for the select board
Okay,
agenda
now,
on
yeah.
Thursday.